Hi everyone, it's Caris. Today I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons why I think you should read the Blood trilogy by Catherine Doyle. The 3 books in this trilogy are Vendetta, Inferno, which I seem to have been aesthetically inspired by with my eyeshadow look today. We're going to pretend that that wasn't a coincidence and that I'm a true professional and did it on purpose. And the finale is Mafiosa. If I had to summarise this trilogy in a few words, I would use Romeo and Juliet meets the Mafia. So it's set in Chicago and follows the story of a teenager called Sophie who's previously lived a quite ordinary, boring sort of life. And then one day a family of 5 brothers moves into a house near hers. When Sophie meets this family, things start to change as a bit of a romance develops, and things also start to develop in her own personal and family life as she begins to find herself caught between 2 warring families. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, definitely keep watching to hear more about why you should pick up the series, and even if it doesn't sound like your sort of thing, maybe keep watching anyway, because I genuinely think that there's something for everyone in these books. I loved them so much and I just want to tell everyone to read them so I have more people to talk about them with. Reason number 1 is the writing. Before I even get into the individual aspects of this story that I loved, I first of all had to mention the general way in which this story is told. During YALC 2016, I went to Catherine Doyle's workshop on how to use film to inspire your writing, and you could definitely tell that this was something that really inspired her own work, because as I was reading it, I could almost imagine it being played out on a screen in front of me. I could vividly picture the characters and the settings from the descriptions that were used in the book, which is something that is very unusual for me. I'm the literal worst at being able to picture things, so I think that just shows how well this was done, and it was also done whilst using quite simple and definitely very readable language. This also helped me to get a real sense of the atmosphere at any given time in the series. For example, there'd be times when one chapter had ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger or a moment where tension had been building, and then the next chapter would start somewhere slightly different, which is obviously very similar to what you see in a lot of TV shows and movies. You'll often see them using this tactic to build suspense and drive that sense of tension. This type of writing definitely will make you want to keep on reading. I just wanted to keep flying through the chapters and to find out what had happened, and because of this I read these books so quickly. Reason number 2 is female friendship. I am all about female friendships in YA. It's something that I always try and look for, and Sophie and her best friend Millie are now right up there with my all-time favourite fictional friendships. I met Kat at YALC again this year. I'll put a picture in on the screen. Excuse how I look because it was the end of day 3 and I'd just given up on my appearance by that point. I talked briefly to her about the friendship element of the book and told her that I really loved it, and she said that it was something that she wanted to be quite central to the book, and that it was important to her to portray a female friendship that was genuinely like good and supportive, as opposed to the bitchy, backstabbing sorts of friendships that you can often see portrayed. I definitely agree that that's a trope that I'm also really tired of seeing, especially in portrayals of friendship between teenagers. I just loved how supportive the characters were of each other, no matter what else they had going on in their own lives. Possibly my favourite line from the whole series is a line in the 3rd book where Millie says, "You know, we're the real love story here," and I was just like, yes, I love that. This is definitely the sort of friendship that I want to see more of in YA. Reason number 3 is humour. Humour isn't something that I expected at all to be that prevalent in this series when I was going into it, so I was really pleasantly surprised to see that it still had a really strong presence. There were a number of different ways in which humour is developed throughout the books, one of which is Sophie's own voice and narrative. Her own sense of humour is quite sarcastic and dry, and I found that really resonated with me because I was like, that's me. And the other main way in which humour is brought into the story is through the contrast of the underworld and the mafia sort of things and the real world or just everyday society, which also plays into Millie and Sophie's friendship as well. Having a character like Millie to ground Sophie in what I guess you could call the real world, although the underworld is still the real world, you know what I mean, really gave the story scope to inject some light humour into it, because it meant that you could have violence and mafia slang and all things like that mixed in with light-hearted pop culture references. I also think that this inclusion of humour and pop culture references really opens this series up to just a wide range of readers. If you like fantasy, I think that the mafia inclusions, whilst it isn't fantasy, make it read like a fantasy series a little bit, whereas whereas the inclusion of pop culture references make it really fun and something that people who love contemporary like me will also love to read. Reason number 4 is romance. Without spoiling any specifics, the main romance in this series comes in the form of a love triangle. As someone who isn't often fussed by romance stories anyway, I genuinely thought that I would be rolling my eyes all the way through this, especially with the inclusion of a love triangle. But I was really pleasantly surprised. I thought this element of the story was really well executed, and what I really liked was that Sophie was such a strong character on her own. I think often romance inclusions really make a character go all gooey-eyed and then that's all they care about, and I'm just like, no. Whilst romance does become a big part of her life, it isn't the only thing that her life revolves around, and she deals with a lot of other complex issues which she often has to foreground, which I thought was a lot more realistic. So in that way, the romance just became the cute cherry on the top to what would have been a really great story even without it. So I'd say if you're a huge romance fan, you'll probably love this, but even if you aren't, if you're like me and just cynical and don't really care too much about romance, you'll probably enjoy it anyway. And the 5th reason why I think you should read this series is for the resolution. At Yalk, after I told Kat that I'd just finished reading this series, she asked me if I was mad at her for the decisions that she'd made and the way that the story wrapped up, and I was like, actually no, because although there were certain things that I was like, oh, I wish that wouldn't have happened, I sort of saw the ending as sort of the only way that the story could have been resolved while still being realistic to all of the characters and all of their previous actions. So because of that, I thought it was very well tied together, and I was actually really content with the way that the 3rd book ended. I know that there's honestly nothing worse than committing yourself to a series just for it to be a really crap ending, so I really don't think you have anything to worry about with this one. So those were 5 reasons why I think you should read the Blood for Blood trilogy by Catherine Doyle. To summarise, it's a fast-paced, thrilling and addictive trilogy with great portrayals of friendship and great romance, and I know that I'm going to be raving about it and telling everyone to read it for a really long time. If you have any more specific questions about the trilogy, let me know in the comments, or if you've read the trilogy, let me know what you thought, but do try to keep the comment section spoiler free. If you do want to chat spoilers, then my Twitter, Instagram and Goodreads will all be linked in the description, so just feel free to message me on any of those platforms and we can have a great little chat about it, because as I said, I just need to talk to people about this series. Other than that though, that is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you again next time. Bye!